All right, good morning, everyone. Thank you for tuning in to today's webinar, The Secrets to Reducing Your College Costs, presented by Gary Sipos of College Cash Solutions. My name is Natasha. I am the marketing manager here at Marin Magazine of Make It Better Media Group, and I will be the woman behind the curtains helping to moderate today's webinar. I am also joined today by Mimi Toll, the National Editorial Director here at Make It Better Media Group. Mimi will be assisting in the Q&A portion of our presentation. And since she is a mother with 2 girls in college, I'm sure she'll have some questions of her own. Our Q&A portion will be after our presentation, so please enter any questions you may have via the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. And without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Mimi, who will introduce Gary.
Natasha, thank you so much. As Natasha has introduced me, my name is Mimi, and today you're going to hear a talk called The Secrets to Reducing Your College Costs. I wish I had listened to this a few years ago. I knew that college was expensive, and I thought that half the battle is getting the kids into college, and then you realize how much you've got to pay for college. The average cost can range from $25,000 to $80,000 each year. At the end, the degree investment could be anywhere from $100,000 to over $320,000. Because there's room and board, there's activities, there's travel, there's so much that you don't consider, and I certainly didn't have that lump sum saved. Here to help you today is our speaker. Gary's a nationally recognized college cost reduction expert. He's appeared on ABC, CBS, NBC, and Fox, and has written a book appropriately called College Cash Solutions. He's been featured in Wall Street Journal, Marin Magazine, Elite Advisor magazine, and he's been featured in the international best-selling author Brian Tracy's next book titled The Masters of Success. Pretty cool. He's also authored the 15 biggest tax mistakes costing business owners millions. He knows his stuff. So Mr. Sipos is an accredited investment fiduciary who specializes in helping families and businesses optimize their financial processes. Today, he's here to talk to you about how to reduce your college costs. He's attended 3 colleges, Loyola Marymount, St. Mary's, and Stanford University. Not inexpensive. Please join me today in welcoming noted author, TV personality, founder of publicly traded companies, including College Cash Solutions, Mr. Gary Sipos.
All right, well, thank you. Thank you for that lovely introduction. Okay. Oh, and yeah, you spoke about those expensive colleges like Stanford and St. Mary's, and I'll just say this. I also went to a private Jesuit high school in Phoenix, Arizona called Brophy Prep. And all of that education cost my parents about $100 in total. So you got to love that.
So maybe you've learned from your parents and you are passing this on.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah.
Impressive.
Actually, it was sort of all me. But anyways.
Oh, okay, good.
So we're going to be talking about the secrets to reducing your college costs. And I've built a company called College Cash Solutions, or collegecashsolutions.com is where you can find us. And there's a disclosure. We're not supposed to talk to your financial advisor or your CPA about everything I talk about in here. All right, enough of that. So what we're going to talk about today are what are your college costs and who's eligible, how to apply, and then here's the bullet that's the most important. It's called how your need for aid is calculated. Once you understand how they calculate your, the equation, it's called expected family contribution, or EFC, then you can do things to position yourself and fit the calculation well. And the problem is most people don't know how the calculation is calculated and the equation is calculated, and they don't fit it well. And so we'll be spending a lot of time on that part. And then there's college funding options, financial tools, and a lot more. So here we go. Off we go. So the first slide, though, is a little bit about me. And the first question is, and this is not a trick question, and that is, what is this? What's this a photograph of? And actually, since it's not a trick question, it's a car. And so why am I starting this presentation showing you a picture, and it's in Arizona, as you can see, Phoenix, Arizona. That's where I grew up. And actually, that is where I grew up. So I grew up sort of poor and at times homeless, and sometimes even living in that car with my dad. In fact, my freshman year in college, that's where I lived when I was in Phoenix with my dad. So you can imagine living out of a car in Phoenix, Arizona, where it's 110 degrees outside or even hotter. and at 2 in the morning, it gets all the way down to 103. There's some great stories there, to say the least. So I went from that, and then I went to this. So let's see, I designed
Hey,
this
Gary,
helicopter.
I just want to jump in real quick. You need to share your screen. The slides aren't showing.
Oh,
Thank you.
thank you for saying that. Let's see, share screen. Sorry about that. I thought I already did. Okay, well, let me back up then. And
we need to see the car. Yeah, there we go.
There's the car. Thank you for saying that. Boom. So yeah, what is this? This is where I grew up, in this car here. At least not all the time, but a lot of times in apartments. And then, and that's, so like when I was in college, my freshman year, that's where I lived, Oy vey. And this is what happened afterwards. I designed the H-64, and there was me with Buzz Aldrin at West Point, and there's me at the Harvard Business School, giving a speech. I've been on TV. Whoops, let me go back one previous. And yeah, here's at the NASDAQ. I started a company in my living room, created one, and it got listed on the NASDAQ. So crazy stuff. Yeah, there's me and Buzz. And so, what's the difference between living in a car and, and when I was a kid with my dad to doing all this crazy stuff? And the answer is college. So I went to college. And so it was really important to me, or let's just say college, there's me before college and me after college, and two different people. And so to me, college is really important. And unfortunately, these days, it's super expensive and people are getting priced out of it. And so I'm fortunately in a position now where I can help other people. And so that's what I do. So I have College Cash Solutions that helps people afford college, especially middle class. They just get crushed because if you're, how do you say it, sort of poor, you'll get a lot of money, just fill out the forms, you'll do fine. And then if you're super rich, writing an $80,000 check to go to college is just petty cash. Great, just write it, no big deal. But the middle class tends to get crushed, where they fill out the forms, they don't get any money, and but then they can't afford $80,000 4 years in a row. And so this is mainly targeted, I could say, for the middle class, helping them be able to afford colleges that they might think is unaffordable. And it's very important to me that I do this type of work because, yeah, it's changed my life. So here's probably the worst slide of the whole presentation. So it's called cost of attendance. Now, cost of attendance is everything. It's books, room, board, tuition, the whole deal, even travel. So I recommend University of Hawaii because then, you can get need-based aid to travel to Hawaii. So that was my big joke of the day. But anyways, so here's the numbers. So good old Stanford, yay Stanford. The leader of the pack, $78,000, almost $80,000. Santa Clara, $75,000. Harvard College is $75,000. Berkeley is $36,000. Cal Poly, $30,000. Yeah, one of the best bangs for the buck if you're an engineer is Cal Poly. San Francisco State, $27,000, and good old College of Marin, $3,000, and it could even be free depending on other factors. And so this is per the College Board in 2020. And let's see, on this slide, so this is, everything. Your child leaves in September, comes back in June. Those are all the costs, in between, the cost of attendance. They even throw a couple $1,000 in there for haircuts and pizza on the weekends and things of that nature. All right. And then one thing I also personally need to point out is Stanford is a university, but then Harvard is just a college. So would you want to go to a university or a college? So okay, I'll tell you what, I'll stop with the jokes and move on. So there you go. All right, so let's see here. What does this say? The cost of a four-year degree has been increasing faster than inflation for over 30 years. So, and that's probably why you all are here. And that's because, there's the inflation rate in the United States of America, and then there's the inflation rate of colleges. And the inflation rate in college is just crazy. Yeah, because I remember when I was in college, one of the things I did, I paid for my college myself. And one of the things I did was I was a bartender. And nowadays, if you're a bartender, there's no way you can pay, $80,000 a year for college, that's for sure. All right. And there's about $181 billion for this report. What we do is we all pay tax dollars, to the state and to the county and to the U.S. government. And that 181 billion of all those taxes that we pay is spread out amongst the 3,800 colleges across the United States of America. and it's a financial aid system set up by our government. And so, and then there's another 90 billion in tax deductions. So my goal is to get some of that 181 billion for you. All right, so here comes the very first question. And the first question is how many years does it take to get a 4-year degree? And people sort of look at me funny when I ask that question. And the answer, though, is a little bit surprising. It's 5.5 years. And so then the next question is, why does it take 5.5 years? And usually people say, well, you can't get the classes, or it costs a lot of money or something like that. But actually, by far and away, the number one reason why it takes 5.5 years to get a 4-year degree is changing majors. So this is lesson number 1. So lesson number 1 is you want to try to pick the right major and the right college the first time. And that's quite a trick. Because, on the one hand, you have 18-year-olds, 17, 18-year-olds. And on the other hand, you become a senior in high school and they say, what college and what major are you going to be? And, a lot of times it can be an overwhelming question. And you want to try to hit the right answer the first time, or else you'll be paying an extra year and a half. And that could be a $100,000 issue, $80,000 a year times a year and a half. That's, a little over $100,000. So this is the very first lesson, is try to pick the right major. And so then the question is, well, how do you do that? Well, there's a couple ways. And one way is become best friends with your high school counselor and work on this issue. It's like, hey, how do I pick the right major? Please, help me work on this. And then I have a process too, some online tools that was developed by MIT, these applied psychologists, where you take a test online, and it's a psychology test because they were applied psychologists, and they ask you a bunch of questions trying to identify your values, and then they say, here's a bunch of careers that that people love their lives doing these careers with your same values. And then from there, you go on informational interviews. You check out a bunch of those careers, and you go on informational interviews, and that's where the magic happens. And then finally, hopefully you get some internships, while you're in high school. So it'd be nice to work on this even after 8th grade. You start doing this, and you iterate throughout high school, working on this question, what's going to be my major once, 4 years from now, 4 or 5 years from now. And then finally, you figure out your major. And then the last question is, okay, which colleges have my major? Because most kids, they start out, hey, I want to go to this college. And then they try to figure out their major. And then they go to that school. And then they change majors. They call mom and say, Mom, I hate my life. And usually, but it's really, Mom, I just picked the wrong major. And then it's like, great, now we got an extra year and a half of college. And we want to avoid that. So, and people that do the MIT process, actually, on average, they graduate in 4.3 years. So it's great. So I highly recommend work with your high school counselors, do this MIT process, and hopefully it'll save you a lot of time, energy, heartbreak, and maybe $100,000 too. All right, so enough of that. But that's lesson number 1. Now lesson number 2, if we're in the Western United States, and there's this thing called Western Undergrad Exchange, or WUI. And if you go to this website, witchy.edu/WUI, what they'll do, it's only for Western schools only, and they're public schools. And if they're out of state, then the most they can charge is 150% of in-state tuition. So, a lot of times an out-of-state public school will charge 200, 300%, 400% more tuition. And here with this Western Undergrad Exchange, they will just charge 150% max tuition. So if you're thinking of going out of state in the Western region, Oregon, Washington, Arizona, a few other states, check to see. Now, not every public school, so no private school really participates in the Western Undergrad Exchange, but a lot of public schools do, but not every public school. So you'll check to see if the public school out of California, if you're a California resident, will do the Western Undergrad Exchange. And if they do, when you apply to the school, you want to check a box, hey, I want to participate in the Western Undergrad Exchange. So there's some good deals there. All right. Yeah, on the application, be sure to check the WUI rate. I love that word, WUI. Anyways. All right, the next thing. Now this year, because of COVID and all that, we have the SAT and ACT. A lot of times they've been waived, and because whatever, they've waived it. But next year and the previous year and probably all the other years, even though some schools are starting to go test optional, the financial aid department, if you do take the SAT or ACT, they use it, well, let's just say that schools use it for admissions, and every parent thinks they're just used for admissions, but actually they're used by the financial aid department too, and big time. And so here's the next lesson, lesson number 3, and that is the SAT or ACT is used by the financial aid departments as well. And the higher you score on the SAT or the ACT, the more free money you'll get, the more scholarships and grants you'll get, and the less student loans and the less work study you'll get. So that's wonderful, the higher you score. And then it depends on which schools, you know, some schools you have to hit a higher bar than others on the SAT or ACT. But you want to score as high as you can on that test. And so what I say is you want to focus your efforts on one test or the other. Many parents say, okay, take both tests, take the SAT and the ACT, and we'll see how we do. And I say that's unconstitutional. That's cruel and unusual punishment. Because, well, actually, let me step back. When I went to college, there were some colleges that just took the SAT and other colleges that took the ACT. And unfortunately, I applied to both types of colleges. Remember, I applied to a bunch of West Coast schools, which were SAT, and then I applied to University of Chicago, which was the Midwest, and they were ACT only. But now that's no longer true. Every college will take either one without prejudice towards one or the other. And so you want to figure out which type of brain you have. Do you have an SAT brain or an ACT brain? And then there's tests you can take to figure out which way you lean. And there's, yeah, and so I say take those tests and then just focus on the one, but put all your energy in that one, because that'll put money in your pocket. There you go. And so these tests, they're comparison tests. You can go to Kaplan. I know there's one at Kaplan, so kaptest.com, or my name's Gary Sipos. You can come to me and I can give you one of those tests too. You take it at home. It's really nice. Some people will say, well, I'll take both the SAT and ACT and then see how I do, but that's a tough way to do it because they're both whatever all-day tests. And you know, this is about a 3-hour test. These two tests, you take it at home 3 hours, and then it will tell you, you know, a lot of things, whether your brain is a little bit more ACT or SAT. And then let's just say you're an ACT brain. Well, then it will tell you exactly where you did well in the ACT and where you didn't do well, so you know where to study. So there you go. So enough of that. So that's lesson number 3, that focus on one test or the other if they're taking it. This year, of course, they're exempt, but I'm doing this for other years too. And yeah, and then focus on one test or the other. Don't take both. There you go. Put all your energy just into one. And they were used by the financial aid department. All right, there we go. Next slide. All right, so if you're going to write down one equation, this is it. COA minus EFC equals award. And when you fully understand this equation, then you can position yourself well to reduce your college costs. So great. Now I'll go to the next slide because that's fully explainable. Just kidding. Actually, yeah, here we go. COA stands for cost of attendance. I'll explain this equation. And so that was that first one of those first slides I showed you that said Stanford was 78 and Cal Poly was 30. You know, that's everything: tuition, room, board, etc. So that's COA, cost of attendance. And then EFC stands for expected family contribution. It's what the government expects your family to contribute to college. Yeah. And so that's the EFC. And you fill out a form called the FAFSA and the CSS profile to calculate that. We'll get into that in a minute. And then the award is grants and scholarships and work study and student loans, all of that. And once you fill out the FAFSA and the CSS profile to calculate your EFC, then the financial aid officer will take this equation, cost of attendance minus your expected family contribution, and calculate your reward for their school. And he'll get, it's up to the financial aid officer to find out the number of grants and scholarships that his school will offer you, and student loans and work study. And so that's how it works from a 30,000-foot point of view. And now we'll get a little bit deeper into it. And so where does that money come from? A lot of it is taxes, federal government taxes, state taxes. Yeah, so Mimi, who introduced me, did you pay any taxes this year, Mimi? Yeah, I was just wondering.
I'm unmuting. Did I pay taxes?
Yes. Did you pay any taxes this year? Yeah, well, thank you very much. That's part of that $181 billion. So I appreciate that we'll get back Mimi's taxes. Thank you very much. And in the state and federal monies. And then also colleges and universities, I get letters from Stanford saying donate, so they have their own pensions and endowments. And then there's also private sources. And on the private sources, that, you know, that could be like the Kiwanis Club or Rotary Club. And I say that that's only 2% of the aid, you know, the private sources. 98% of the aid is federal government, state government, and colleges and universities through the FAFSA and the CSS profile system, through the federal system. And that's where you probably want to spend most of your time, because the 2% is, you know, writing an essay to the Kiwanis Club or something of that nature, or going online like to a place like fastweb.com, and essentially you're fishing and hoping you get something. And so I say that's probably not the most efficient use of your time. I would spend more of my time in SAT, ACT prep, because you'll get probably more money there than you would in this area. So there you go, good enough there. All right, we'll move on. So there's the, so how do you calculate your EFC, your expected family contribution? You fill out a thing called the FAFSA, which is Free Application for Federal Student Aid. I love all these acronyms, you know, in this world. There's the EFC, there's the FAO, the Financial Aid Officer, there's the FAFSA, there's a CSS profile, all these acronyms you learn. And so the FAFSA is this form. It's going to ask you all sorts of questions like, how old are you? How much money do you make? You know, and how much money do you have? And you'll find out it doesn't matter how much money you have, it matters where it's at. So money over here hits the FAFSA form and really hard and badly. And then money over here doesn't hit it at all. And so then, of course, you want to shift your monies from here to there. And so that way you want to get your EFC as low as possible, because the lower the EFC, the bigger the award is the goal. And so the FAFSA, all 3,800 schools want you to fill out the FAFSA if you want to apply for need-based aid. And then if you want federal loans, those federal student loans, you have to fill out the FAFSA. So let's just say that you know you're not going to, you know, get any scholarships or grants, but you want to get a student loan. Well, then you have to fill out the FAFSA to get that. And then just make sure you fill it out correctly, because if they do bump it, it can take 4 to 6 weeks of processing time. And during that processing time, you know, the financial aid officers are distributing money to other people that fill FAFSA. And they have these buckets. They have a federal bucket, a state bucket, and a college bucket of money. And the buckets get lower and lower. And as they get lower, they get a little bit more, you know, frugal in handing out awards. You want to be in the first stage. So you don't want to get bounced, let's put it that way. So the next issue is, when's the very first date that you can apply for a FAFSA? You'll fill out the FAFSA. And the answer is October 1 of your student's senior year in high school. That's the very first year. And you have to fill it out all 4 years. But you don't necessarily need to fill it out on October 1st. So you want to be but you want to be early. You want to be in the first batch. So if you fill it out by mid-November, sometime between October 1 and November 15th, you're in the first batch, and you'll be fine. You know, yeah, and it doesn't matter if you fill it out on November 15th or October 1st or any day in between, you're in the first batch and you'll do well. But you don't want to wait as much later. And yeah, so in fact, here it is from the Wall Street Journal. I got this quote: schools award money on a first come, first served basis. And if you wait until, you know, January or April and May, you'll be back in line, and they'll give you an attenuated award. So, you know, get in the first batch, but you don't have to wait up, you know, midnight on October 1st and fill it out. You don't have to do that though. So there you go. And then some colleges have priority deadlines, like in November, early action. And so just, you know, you want to get it done by, I'd say mid-November, you're fine. Okay, so that's the FAFSA form we spoke about. And then there's another form, and every school, all 3,800 colleges in the United States of America want you to fill out the FAFSA. Then there's the CSS profile. And the CSS profile, you know, CSS, College Scholarship Service is called, and is for a lot of private schools, not every private school, but a lot of private schools want you to fill out this form in addition to the FAFSA. So for example, Stanford is one of them. So if you apply to Stanford, they're going to say fill out the FAFSA and the CSS profile. And let's see here. The CSS profile asks you pretty much the same questions as the FAFSA, and they ask a few others, like they ask about home equity and a little bit more detail on your assets and expenses. So it's a little bit more detailed than the FAFSA. And here's the big issue, a couple of big issues. The big one is just be consistent with the FAFSA. So if you fill out the FAFSA and then the CSS profile, and there's some, you know, contradictions, that might confuse a financial aid officer, and then he could bounce it, And then if he bounces it, it takes 4 to 6 weeks and money could be flowing through your hands and you don't even know it. So just be sure to be consistent. And that's one thing I help parents do. I help them fill it out. I give them the answer keys with the FAFSA and CSS profile so they're totally consistent. So that's good. And then here's the other funny one, and that is using common sense is a mistake. If you fill out the FAFSA and the CSS profile and you use common sense and sound logic, you'll probably blow it. And the reason why is because Congress created all these obscure rules about the FAFSA and CSS profile. And I'll give you one right now. So here's one, and that is if a student, it doesn't make any sense at all, but Congress made these rules. So if a student works in the summer or works, in high school and saves money for college. So let's just say they work at McDonald's and they save a couple $1,000 for college. That's admirable, right? Well, that couple $1,000 in the student's name hits the FAFSA and the CSS profile 400% harder than if that same money is in mom and dad's name. So remember I said it doesn't matter how much money you have, it matters where it's at. So a really bad place to keep money is in the student's name. So like hopefully the most they have is $500 in their name, so it's minimal impact. But if they have $1,000 or more in their names, that's bad. They'll, essentially your EFC will go up where all that money will be gone, over the 4 years. So you want to move money out of the kid's name into the parent's name. That's one thing. Does that make any sense? No, but that's the rule. So that's, common sense is, hey, let's have a responsible student, have them, work and save for college. Well, Congress, pardon me, Congress penalizes you for that. So that's like what I say, using common sense is a mistake. And there's hundreds of crazy rules like that. And so anyway, so there's the FAFSA, the CSS profile, and then the school might have its own institutional forms. A few schools ask for, and they have their own forms on top of that. So you might have to fill out the FAFSA and then the CSS profile and then the school's institutional forms. And the forms will be similar, just be consistent amongst all three so you don't confuse the financial aid officer. And again, what I do is I give you answer keys so that way you're solidly consistent. You just fill out the ones. And then I'll give you a lot of times strange, non-intuitive answers so that way you don't call it, hit one of those landmine questions like, is there any money in the kid's name? And boom, you don't get any money and you're like, well, I must have made too much money. It's like, no, you just had money in the wrong spots. Yeah. All right. Yeah, so don't use common sense, because if you use common sense and sound logic when you fill out the forms, you'll blow it. It's pretty funny. And then there might be additional forms too, like a business supplement for business owners. You can exempt your business under certain conditions. And of course, divorce separated. So I'll talk about these two in a second because I get a lot of business owners and in the divorce situation. So actually, the business owner case real quick, and that is, this is how I got started. I had a client, and it was a grandmother, and she was lovely. And essentially, I did a financial process because I do financial processes for people. I'm a sort of a strange financial advisor. Most financial advisors are just focused on, hey, my mutual fund's better than yours, come to me. And that's product. My product is better than yours. And what I do is I do processes. And so like college cost reduction is the process. And then this grandmother, I had a process. And so she had all these different monies. And so money's an IRA and money's a brokerage account. And she said, how much, when's my money going to run out? And so what I did is I did a process on her. I did a little algorithm, mathematical algorithm. And essentially I asked her, well, what's the rate of return? How much do you have? And, and how are you taking the money out? And she's like, oh, this account first, count 1 first, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And I ran an algorithm and I figured out that she was going to run out of money when she was 86 years of age. And the bad thing about grandmother is she was very healthy and probably going to live well beyond 86. So that was the bad news with her. And so I ran this algorithm that said, you know what? Keep all the money in those accounts and get the same rate of return. But instead of taking it out of account 1 first, take it out of account 3 first, 2 second, 5 third, 4 next, and 1 last. So I changed the order of withdrawals. That's all I did. And by doing that order change, that's a financial process. By doing that process, then her money lasted until she was, to 100 years of age. So that was awesome, and she didn't have to, change her lifestyle or anything else. So I do financial processes. And so she said, hey, you do these processes. I have these kids, her kids were grown and they had kids. So her kids were in their 40s, 50s. And they owned, her daughter owned her own business. or a 50-year-old daughter, and she had 3 daughters. And unfortunately, I met this family, Ann and Jim, when their youngest daughter was a senior in college. So they just went through 12 years of paying college costs, and I met them in the 12th year. And they were deep in debt. And the bad news about this couple, or the bad news about the 3 daughters, was all of the 3 daughters was very intelligent and very accomplished. Because of that, they all got into Ivy Leagues. And so they had these outstanding daughters. And so they, at that time, Ivy Leagues only cost $50,000 a year. So if you can imagine in your own checking account, if you paid $50,000 a year, and then the next year you paid another $50,000 a year, and the year after that, another $50,000 a year, and you did that 12 years in a row, well, let's just say that Ann and Jim, their credit cards were maxed out, their home line of credit was maxed out, they had all these parent loans, student loans, and they were just a mess financially. And bad news about it was I looked at them, unfortunately I met them, in the 12th year, and I found out they could have exempted their business. So under certain conditions, you can exempt your business, and if they would have gotten at least 30,000 in scholarships and grants a year. But 12 years in a row, the financial aid officer looked at their FAFSA and CSS profiles and they said to themselves, if this family would have exempted their business, I'd give them $30,000 of scholarships and grants. But they didn't, and I, the financial aid officer, worked for the school. I don't work for them, so I'm not going to tell them. And you get no financial aid. So unfortunately in that situation, they were cooked. But if I meet people now before their girls go to college or go to Ivy Leagues, I'll say, hey, let's exempt your business because I work for them. I don't work for the school. So that's great. So you got somebody working in your corner. And so just know that certain businesses, if they're configured in the right way, can be exempt. And and then I read this in the New York Times, parents and students sometimes forget we work for the school, not for them, and that's from a financial aid officer. So just know that. They're really nice people, but it's sort of like going to the IRS and saying, help me with my taxes. They work for the IRS. They're probably not going to really push tax deductions. All right. And then that's the first case study. The second case study is divorced couples. So in a divorce situation, in California, supposedly 11 out of every 10 marriages end in divorce. So I'll address this issue. And so anyways, there's my another big joke. But anyways, so we got a husband, we have a boy and a girl. So yay, and they get married. So that's really sweet. And then they have a daughter. So nice. But unfortunately, they live in California, so they get a divorce. So biological dad lives over here, and biological mom and the daughter, they live over here. All right. And they share custody, 51-49. The daughter lives with mom 51% of the time, and she lives with dad 49% of the time. So almost 50-50, but she lives a little bit more with mom. And so she lives with mom one more day a year than with dad. But dad takes the deduction on the 1040 form. He has their daughter, mom does not. And then the divorce decree states that dad's going to pay for 100% of college costs, whatever, they just agreed to that in the divorce decree. And then also they have some 529 plans, college savings plans, and dad owns 100% of those. And oh, by the way, we'll talk a little bit later, but 529s are a scam. So we'll talk about that, why they're a scam. And then mom remarries a new guy. And then since the divorce decree says that dad's going to pay 100% of college costs, the prenup says, hey, the new husband will not pay any college costs. And so I guess mom is happy with that because, biological dad's going to pay for college anyways. And so now, whose financial information goes on the FAFSA and the CSS profile and the institutional forms? Is it dad? Because, hey, he's on the daughter's on the 1040 of dad's tax return. And plus the divorce decree says that, and he owns the 529 plans. Or, is it mom? Or is it mom and the new guy? Or is it mom, the new guy, and the dad? And I've seen all those scenarios. And there's only one scenario that's correct. And but who puts their financial information on it? And it can be very confusing. And well, here's the answer. And the answer is it's mom, and it's just this one. All this other stuff doesn't matter. It doesn't matter who owns the 529s. It doesn't matter if a divorce decree says it or the tax return. All those are red herrings. The only thing that matters is where does the child live more often? So the child lives with mom one more day per year. That's it, 51-49 with mom or more. And so mom is called the custodial parent according to the Department of Education rules. So now it's only mom's information that goes on the FAFSA and the CSS profile and the institutional forms. But since mom got remarried, doesn't matter that she has this prenup, then it's mom and the new husband. So it'd be mom's income and assets and the new husband's income and assets will be on the form, but not biological dad, he's off. And that's true for, let's see, there's 3,800 schools in the United States of America, and there's 121 that's not true for. But the other 3,700, that is true, what I just said. And then for those special 121 schools, they will ask about biological dad's income and assets too. So, so there's a big hint there. If you're in a divorce situation, then whoever fits the financial aid, whoever I can get the financial aid formulas to fit better, you might want to have the student live with them at least one more day per year. All right, there we go. And we'll go on. Whoa, hit that twice. So yeah, so I call this your circle of wealth. And again, I sort of alluded to this earlier when I was talking about grandma and doing that algorithm. So I call this your circle of wealth, and it consists of your investments, let's say your 401k and your retirement plans and all that stuff. And this is where most financial advisors focus solely. It's essentially, it's like let's just get the best mutual funds we can get. And, but a part of your circle of wealth, and you want to pay attention to that, but it's not the end all be all, that's for sure. In fact, I should make that sort of smaller, minimal in this pie chart. But then another thing that affects your circle of wealth, because you want to get your circle as big as possible, is your lifestyle. So let's just say you make $200,000 a year, but you're spending 300, your circle of wealth will contract, right? And then here's the area I focus on. I call it unknown and unnecessary wealth transfers. That's a mouthful. But essentially it's financial processes, where this blue area is financial products. My mutual fund's better than yours. Here it's processes like college cost reduction, like transferring money from the student's name into the parent's name, which will reduce your EFC, which will give you a bigger grant, give you larger grants and scholarships for college. So it's a financial process. So there's lots of processes, or like the algorithm I wrote up for that grandmother it was just essentially a distribution center. What's the optimal distribution strategy of your retirement plans? And there's a whole bunch of financial processes, how to reduce your capital gains, et cetera. And so I focus on this area first and hard, and then I'll look at this, and then I'll look at this blue area too, but you really want to focus on this first to really grow your circle of wealth over your lifetime. All right, so, but we're looking at the financial process of college cost reduction. And in that equation, cost of attendance minus EFC equals award. Some schools will meet 100% of the award. So let's just say the cost of attendance is $50,000 and your EFC is $20,000. So 50 minus 20 equals 30,000. Some schools will give you that award of $30,000, but other schools might only give you half of it. So instead of giving you 30, they might only give you 15,000, or others, give you 30% or 60%, or some will give you zero. They're like, we don't, great. If your EFC is really low and, according to the Department of Education in Washington, D.C., you should get a lot of money. We're not going to give you any. So it's good to know, when you're thinking of colleges to apply for, it's good to calculate what your EFC will be, and then, and then use strategies to reduce your EFC. And then lastly, know which colleges are generous, and especially even before you go visit schools. So there's a couple schools that are really popular around here. One of them is University of Oregon. Well, I call it UC Eugene, University of California at Eugene. You know where that is? Actually, it's University of Oregon Ducks. Yep. And but I call it UC Eugene because so many kids go up there, and they're very stingy to Californians. So they don't give 100% of award. That's for sure. They're like 50%. So you won't get a very generous award from University of Oregon Ducks. And what's the other poster child? University of Colorado at Boulder. Beautiful school, but just know that you're not going to get a lot of money at Boulder. All right, so know those statistics before you apply. And then other schools are very generous, and so it's good to know which ones are generous. So let's see here. Yeah, so that was percentage of award met. And then there's, of that award met, so let's just say you're going to get a $30,000 award, what percentage of that's going to be in free money or gift aid? So free money, gift aid is essentially scholarships and grants, money you don't have to pay back. And so you want a really high award met. It'd be great if they met 100% of what Washington, D.C. says. And then you want a really high percentages of gift aid. You want it mostly in scholarships and grants. And you want minimal and self-help, which is student loans, which you have to pay back after college, and work study, a job on campus. So you'd like it, really high gift aid, really high percentage award, and minimal self-help, it's called. So yeah, you get your award, and then it's broken out into gift aid and self-help. So all right, there you go. And so it's good to know what schools' percentages they give for all three of these. And hopefully they're high in these two. And it's good to know that before you apply or even visit the schools. And, and if it's low, if it's too low or they're too stingy, you might not want to even visit that school, during your junior year. All right. So where can you find this information of what the percentages are? So princetonreview.com or bigfuturecollegeboard.org or myself at collegecashsolutions.com or Gary Sipos. And what I'm going to do is I'm giving you all right now through this workshop sort of the structure and how everything works from a 30,000 foot point of view. And then what I'm going to do afterwards is I'm going to invite you in for a complimentary meeting where I will calculate your EFC as you walk in my door as we meet, on Zoom or whatever, if you meet me in person or online. And I'll calculate your EFC as I first meet you. And then I'll see if there's any strategies to reduce your college costs, to lower your EFC. And if there is not, I'll let you know. I'll be like, there's nothing I can do to help you to reduce your college costs. You're good to go, or, you're paying full boat or whatever. And, or what I'll do is at the end of the meeting, I'll say, whoa, if we do this strategy, maybe we shelter your real estate or we reduce your home equity by using just academic strategies. And there's all sorts of techniques one can use. Now your EFC is down to here, then, then I'll tell you about my programs that I can, where you can engage me, or I can help you fill out the forms and all that kind of good stuff. So that'll be at the end of this. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But here's a case study. So we have School A to talk about, all this thing I've been addressing. So School A is the expensive school. It's $50,000 a year, which actually say maybe not that expensive. That's the cost of attendance. And let's assume you fill out the CSS profile in the FAFSA and your EFC is $10,000. So according to the United States government, they expect your family to contribute to college $10,000 a year. So 50 minus 10 is $40,000. So you should get an award of $40,000 at School A. Now we got School B, and the cost of attendance is $30,000, so much cheaper than School A. But your EFC is the same at every college and university, all 3,800 of them across the United States. Your EFC is the same everywhere. So 30 minus 10 is 20. So you'll get a $20,000 award. So the question to you right now is, which school is less expensive for the parents? School A or School B? And it's a trick question because with this information, you don't know yet. So now I'll give you more information. School A meets 100% of their award. And School B only meets 60% of the award. So according to Washington, D.C., you should get a $20,000 award, but School B, somewhere, let's say in Kansas or something like that, only says, well, we're going to give you 60%. So 60% of $20,000 is 12, so they're going to short you by $8,000. So how much is the parents going to pay? So in School A, they're just going to pay the EFC, the expected family contribution of $10,000. But School B, they're going to pay the $10,000 EFC plus the $8,000 they got shorted. So 10 plus 8 is 18,000. So almost twice as much. So the cheap school, the 30,000 school, the parents are going to pay 18 versus 10. So just know that the sticker price isn't necessarily what you're paying, and a cheaper school could be more expensive. Yeah. So there you go. So just know that that's possible. All right. So you fill out the FAFSA and the CSS profile, and you finally get an award from the financial aid officer at each school. But just know that sometimes the schools miss award or they under award, and they might even try to compete with other schools. And so if you know the averages, you know that this school gives 82% of need met, and this school gives 97% of gift aid. That's good to know, because then you can negotiate with them. And so can you negotiate with the financial aid officer, FAO, financial aid officers? The answer is yes. The financial aid officers aren't there to help you negotiate the best package, but you have to use their vocabulary. So if you just call them up and say, hey, thank you for the $20,000 award package, but I'd like more, they'll laugh and hang up the phone. But if you say, dear financial aid officer, you give 82% of need met and 75% of gift aid on average. That's your typical average. And I did the calculation, and instead of giving me an 82% award, you gave me a 42% award. So please, I just want a fair award, please, give me your average. That's all we're looking for. They respond to that. So you can negotiate with them, but you have to use their vocabulary and their system and show them what you're talking about in their world. Then they'll respond to that. So there you go. So you can negotiate with them. But if you just call up and say, hey, give me more money, they laugh and hang up the phone. All right. And then there's 3 classes of family, according to the Department of Education in Washington, D.C. There's lower income and assets, maybe they rent, not have much savings, etc. And for those people, just fill out the forms, you'll do well. And you probably, don't need me at all. Then there's the middle class. Maybe you own a home, you have some 529s, which I'll unwind because they're a scam. They work against you in the financial aid formula. So it's sort of like a train, does well and it's going along the tracks. But then once you get to the train's destination, then the train blows up and everybody dies. Not great. And that's what a 529 is like. It's great. They give you tax-free growth and tax-free distribution. That's beautiful. I love that, tax-free growth and tax-free distribution. But the thing I despise is the 529s hit the EFC formula. You have to disclose it on the FAFSA and the CSS profile forms. And then the colleges are like, oh, great, you got those 529s, great, spend those. Where your neighbor across the street that was not as responsible and didn't save for college, they will get the scholarships and grants. So, whatever, it doesn't make any common sense, but that's how it is. So then I'll unwind those. Well, I'll first look and see what penalties there are to unwind them, and then see if unwinding them makes financial sense. And if it does, then we will unwind them and put them in areas where it doesn't hit the UFC formula. And then there's UTMA's Uniform Transfer to Minors Act. That's money in the kid's name. Those are really bad. Maybe you have rental property. We can shield that by restructuring a few things. If you own your own business, we can exempt that. Oh yeah, and grandparents. This is funny, the funniest part. So if a grandparent cuts a check and sends it to the college, that's considered an outside scholarship. And that'll destroy any scholarships and grants the subsequent year. And so there's ways to get grandparent money. And if a grandparent has a 529, that's horrible. There's ways to get, if the grandparents do want to contribute to college, which is beautiful, there's ways to do it where that won't destroy the student's financial aid package. But yeah, there's lots of rooms where people inadvertently step on landmines and they don't even know it. They're like, why didn't I get any money? And I'm like, well, that's why, yeah. So anyways, yeah, these people, middle class, need my help. And we can restructure all these things in the right way. And then there's a super wealthy that say, hey, I can write an $80,000 check out of petty cash. There's ways to pay for college using advanced tax strategies. At least you can make it tax deductible. And people tend to like that. So then I can work with those people too. All right. So now we'll get into some really detailed techniques on how to lower your EFC. And one of them is called the National Index Multiplier, and this has to do with housing. So let me go back a little bit. One click. Whoa, let me go back. Previous. There it is. So the National Index Multiplier. This is for your home. So especially in the San Francisco Bay Area, homes have appreciated greatly. And this might be an opportunity because there's only 2 methods. Some people say, I use my tax bill and use that as the value of my home, which is much lower than the real price of my home. And that will be rejected by the financial aid officers. There's only 2 methods of appraisal that an officer will use. One is the National Index Multiplier, which will appraise your house for ridiculously low. It's just a crazy formula. But a senator wanted to use it, and so he snuck that into a bill, and now you can use it to appraise your house, or fair market value. So they'll go to Zillow or something like that. And so a lot of the families I work with, if you use the National Index Multiplier, they'll value your home much less. And so then we put that on the form, on the FAFSA, on the CSS profile, and it'll be accepted. So that's a really good technique to lower the value of your home. And it's just paperwork and academic. And then if you have rental real estate, you have to put, if you put it into an LLC in the right way, you have to create a special purpose LLC, and you have to check all the boxes correctly. But if you do it right, you can do it wrong really easily. But if you do it the right way, then you can shield your rental real estate. So that's great. So now it's off the books. And then 529 plans, yeah, I spoke about that a little bit earlier. And that is, you can do the calculation to see unwinding it, what the penalties are. versus what's the benefit, how much lower will your EFC be? If it makes sense, let's just say it costs you $1,000 in penalties to unwind it, but if it saves you $5,000 a year, then great. I'll gladly walk up to the ATM and pay $1,000 to get $5,000 a year for 4 years in a row. And so, we do the calculation, and then of course it's always up to the parent to say, yeah, I want to do that, or no, I don't. And if it doesn't make sense, then of course the answer is no, I don't. And then transferring money out of the kid's name and the parent's name, because kids' money hits the EFC formula much harder than parent money does. And then, there's income shifting. If you have your own business, essentially, there's limits on how much kids can make, at least according to the Department of Education. So depending on whether the kid's in college or not, there's certain income limits you want to get to, but you want to shift money to the kids and then fund a Roth, which is an exempt asset. And there's all these different techniques. And depending on your situation, there's hundreds of techniques that can apply to you specifically. So essentially, that's why I'm making all of you this offer at the end, where you can come see me. We'll waive the fee for the first meeting, because I'm just trying to figure out, can I reduce your college costs? And if I can't, I'll let you know. But if I can, I'll let you know that too. And then you can see if you want to sign up or not. All right. And when should you meet with me? Well, I asked one of my partners, business partners, to get a picture of a pregnant lady. She doesn't look too pregnant there. I need her to be more pregnant. That would be the best time to meet me, many years from now. But most people only meet me when their kids are in high school. But in fact, I've even had people that met me when their kids were already in college. And so I wasn't able to, reduce their college costs for freshman year, but sophomore, junior, and senior, it made a lot of sense to do some techniques. So, but the sooner the better, because we can get you on the right track the first time. You don't have to unwind 529 plans, and yeah. And then also, let's just say your student is going to be a freshman in college in September of 21. Well, then you would fill out the FAFSA in October, November of 2020, and they're going to ask about your 2019 tax returns. So if there's anything we need to do with your tax returns, you have to do it 2 years beforehand. Yeah. So we need to plan in advance. All right. And and so if you need, the sooner the better, no unwinding or resetting planning, quote unquote, mistakes, because there's a lot of things that you can do tax-wise that's really smart. Like an UTMA is a very smart tax thing to do, but it's horrible for college. And so we might want to do an UTMA, and then the year before college, we unwind it. And there's ways to do that. And so, yeah. And so we want to get your plan in as soon as possible. Start planning as soon as possible. There you go. All right. And so my income is too high. I shouldn't even bother. I have a client who makes over $1 million a year, and I'm able to reduce his college costs. And I've had other people come into me, prospects, come in, and they only made this one couple made $78,000 a year in the Bay Area, which is pretty low. And they had 2 kids, amazing, and that they could survive the Bay Area. And I couldn't help them at all. I couldn't reduce their college costs 1 penny. So, income is just one factor of many. And grades too low, there's no question about their grades. Although the higher you score on the SAT or the ACT, that can affect your financial aid package. So you want to do well there. And so then I recommend doing that test that I have, the MIT test, to figure out which test is better for you and all that. And then owning a home or rental properties, that'll take me out from, no, you can shield your home and shield your rental properties. Aid's only for special groups. That's not true. It's easy, intuitive. No, the rules are crazy. I guess the tax code, if you put it on the ground, it's probably like this all the way down to the ground. And the Department of Education code is about half that tall is the tax code. It's really thick, and it's written horribly. And in fact, there was a study by Congress that just said there's no reasonable parent can understand the Department of Education codes on the financial aid process, and it's true. I've been studying it for over a decade and still learning every day. It's unintuitive. Let's put it that way. Like I said, if you use common sense and sound logic, you'll blow it. You'll step on one landmine. It's fair. No, I say it's totally unfair process. Like, for example, if your neighbor across the street didn't save for college, he'll get scholarships and grants where you won't because you were responsible and you did. And and then financial aid officers will help. They're friendly people, they're nice people, but they work for the school. So they won't necessarily help. So here's the big finish. What have we learned today? And what we've learned is know which colleges provide the most aid before you apply, even visit. There's billions of dollars available. Consider witchy-wooey schools if you're attending public out of state. Work with your high school counselor to pick the right school the first time, or take that MIT exam and do, go on informational interviews. Fill out the CSS profile forms and don't use common sense when you do so. Financial aid is given out on a first come, first served basis. So apply by, mid-November or October to mid-November or so, get the first batch. You can negotiate with the financial aid officers, but just know they work for the schools, not for you. And the education codes are quite complicated, almost complicated as a tax code. So know how to fill them out in the right way and how to maneuver your money to get the most scholarships and grants for your family. And there's lots of financial tools available to reshape your college costs. And the best time is to start right now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to offer you a 1-hour meeting. You can go to my website, collegecashsolutions.com. You can hit book a meeting, and I'll ask you a whole bunch of questions, your income and your ages and all sorts of things. And I'll just try to figure out if there's any great techniques for you to reduce your college costs. And if there isn't any, I'll let you know. If there is, I'll let you know that too. And here's a screenshot of my website, collegecashsolutions.com. And there's the button, book a meeting. So I put a big red arrow and underline. So you click on that, you book an initial meeting, and there we go. I think we're done. So
Gary, that was amazing.
Yeah, thank you.
You hit so many things that, since I have a freshman, a sophomore, and now a senior, common sense is not correct. I mean, it was so hard to fill out the FAFSA because I was divorced, had 51%, and my ex-husband was awesome trying to help me with all the forms, but it was really complicated. And my daughter on her college essay was so happy that she was the first waitress at this local pizza antica, and she had saved $10,000. I'm like, no.
Oh.
So you're right about they want to take the kids' money first, and
right. It's crazy. Why? But that's how they wrote. That's the rule.
I know. And so, do we have time, Natasha, to get to these questions? Because I think.
Yeah, I think we should take some extra time.
Please, let's take some questions.
I just highly recommend people talking to somebody like you and just mapping it all out and knowing yes, no, yes, no. And the first one, which is a great question, I had started this as well.
Yes.
Why is the 529 a scam?
Because it works against you. When you fill out the FAFSA and the CSS profile and the institutional forms for the colleges, they ask you, do you have any 529 plans? And so, checkbox, yes, I do. And they say, what's the dollar value? And you put the dollar value on, and then the college says, thank you very much. We're now going to, increase your EFC formula, where your EFC will be larger now because you have those 529s.
Yeah.
And then what's even worse, if you have a grandparent-owned 529, because a 529 in the parent name hurts, hurts. A 529 in a grandparent name, let's see, 529. It hurts 500% more if a grandparent owns the 529.
Right.
And in the subsequent year, it's just crazy.
It just always feels like you're saying that we don't have to
there's ways to save for college. So do you want to save for college? Absolutely. Just save it in accounts that don't work against you in the EFC formulas. There it is.
Now, do schools take into account multiple children attending at the same time? I think I would say.
Absolutely.
Okay, great.
Yeah. So your EFC, if you have 2 kids in school at the same time, your EFC gets cut in half.
Yeah. But,
and they don't have to be the same school. They could, one could be at College of Marin and one could be at Stanford, and that means you have 2 kids in college.
Right.
And your EFC gets cut in half at both schools.
That's great. Okay. Yeah. Now, this is a tough one. It's from Patty Bender. When you say middle class, what kind of annual income does that mean? Because in California, on paper, you might look wealthy, but,
Right. Yeah. Middle class in the San Francisco Bay Area is $400,000 a year. Right now, I'm just kidding.
Wait, I thought I was middle class.
But just middle class is really whatever you define it. What I'll say is that income is one factor of many. Like I said, I have a client that makes over $1 million a year, and I'm able to get him need-based aid because he fits the equation. He has other factors that I can do that for. Now, not everybody that makes $1 million a year will get need-based aid, but in his situation, I could do it. Mm-hmm. And then, like I said, there's other people. There was another family that made $78,000 a year, and I couldn't help them reduce their financial aid by $1.
Well, so, what we're saying is
so income is just one factor of many. Yeah. So it's probably best like I said, to go to collegecashsolutions.com, hit book a meeting. I'll ask you some questions for like a half hour, 45 minutes, and I'll let you know if there's any techniques that'll apply to you.
Yeah, no, that's great.
And yeah.
And where the money is. Do I still have time? I've got more questions, Natasha.
Yeah, fire away. I got all day.
Okay, great.
I want to stop your screen share so we can see your lovely faces on a large.
Okay, yeah, let's see. Hold on one second.
That really pretty thing you made, Natasha, the flyer. Okay, so how do Coverdell accounts affect all of this?
Yeah, Coverdale's, just like a 529. Unfortunately, the FAFSA and the CSS profile, they ask for that again, and they use that against you. So those are the, so I did that train analogy. It's like you have a nice train, you're chewing along the track really nicely, but then when you get to your destination, the train blows up and everybody dies. That's a Coverdale, that's a 529. They work against you in the financial aid formulas.
Yeah, it just felt like as I was filling it out, it was like way more reasons for them to not give financial aid. And it felt funny for me because I feel like
there it is.
It did feel awkward filing for financial aid because I thought, well, I guess I could kind of squeeze out and take out loans and pay, but then it was really nice to see there is money available, and it's you're not, taking from other people. It's money available, and you were so right about the date. Filing early, just get it done.
And like I was joking with you earlier, I'm like, hey, did you pay any taxes? Well, let's get some of that money back. $181 billion.
So true. Okay, so let's see. If colleges eliminate SAT or ACT requirements, will financial aid still be based on those scores?
Yeah. This year is,
different. It's
2020, the year of crazy stuff. So this year, no. But next year, yes. So you want to score as high as you can on either the ACT or the SAT. And so you want to figure out which test you're more aligned towards and score as, put all your energy into that one test. But this year they're waiving the ACT, SAT. So they're just going to say everybody's generic on that one. Yeah. So it's a weird year.
So when people book a meeting, what information should they have prepared before your
they'll automatically get an email generated to them. But essentially, I want their tax returns in front of them. Okay. I'll ask a couple lines on their tax returns. And then I'll ask them just really round numbers. How much is their house worth? Just their best guess. What's their mortgage? Round numbers. Oh, roughly my mortgage is about $400,000. And how much they have in various accounts. Does the kids have any money in their names over $1,000? Just everything round number questions. Yeah, but and you'll get a detailed list when you book a meeting on my site, or give me a call and we book a meeting. We'll send you an email with all the questions we'll be asking.
Okay, great. So this was a good question, Julie Mazzina. And I remember for the FAFSA, I was amazed. It all was under me. It was the 5149, as you were saying.
Yeah, there you go.
Crazy. So, but with the CSS, is it the same? Do they require financial info from both parents?
That's where the 121 schools. So there's 3,800 schools in the United States of America. There's only 121 if you pick one of those. When you filled out the CSS profile, if you did pick one of those 121, then it would say, all right, what is the name of your your divorced spouse, and put the name and the email address and the phone number of your divorced spouse. If you did not pick one of those magic 121 schools, which I have that list, I give parents. Yeah. If you did not pick one of those, then it won't ask you that question. So in your case, it sounds like you didn't get lucky and pick one of those 121. So you picked one of the 3,700 on that CSS profile. So it didn't ask you that question. So it just asked your information. So that's
right. I went UC. I went public.
There you go.
So nice. Yeah, I was gonna wear my Berkeley face mask had I known Stanford, just for some fun.
Oh yeah, there you go.
Now,
hold on.
Oh no, well I don't. Oh shoot. Okay.
Just for you. Go Stanford.
Go Bears. I'm looking around.
Go Bears. Although I'm wearing a blue tie. Go Bears. There you go.
That's good. Yeah, I literally got in the mail the little Cal face mask. It was really fun.
Nice. I love it.
Now this was Aaron McFarland asked this question and you sort of had answered it. And we're talking about the different 529 forms, the different ways to, if you're not going to use one of those, is there a number of what people should save per kid, like a safe number, it's a good question. Right. Like it is the saving the money, but you need to save it in the right place so it's not counted against you. So is there a magic number per kid?
So the answer to that question is that's what I do all the time.
Yeah.
But the answer is it depends. You know, you're going public, you're going private, you know, what are you doing? And then also, how much can I reduce your college costs?
Right.
Because a lot of times, you know, if I can make college costs $15,000 a year to go to Stanford or go to Harvard or go to Yale, and it costs you $15,000 a year, you know, you don't need to save that much.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah,
preschool,
and I
50,000.
do that for families, right?
Cool.
Yeah.
And you know, I think this is sort of let's see, because the
So, you know, so sorry, sorry to interrupt you, but yeah, so you know, how much should you save? Well, it depends on how I can configure you. So if I can configure you so college is really cheap, then you don't need to save that much. Yeah. All right, there you go.
Does financial aid, since it's like federal, is there for foreign or colleges abroad, is there special financial aid for colleges abroad?
Right, good question. The answer is no. So there's the United States federal system, according to the Department of Education in Washington, D.C., counts for the 3,800 colleges and universities in the United States of America. So if you go to Canada, Mexico, or over to Scotland or something like that, it doesn't count.
Although those are pretty inexpensive, it seems. Some of
those you know, and sometimes if you have dual citizenship in another country, you can go to college for dirt cheap over there. Yeah.
Well, I see one more question here.
Great.
So because the FAFSA uses prior
2 years prior income, right?
Your child's already in college, there won't be much time to make a change. Well, I think that would be for the next year. Well,
right.
you need 2 years deep of
And you know, and there's some techniques you can do, especially for a small business owner, to do things to, you know, get your adjusted gross income at a level that we calculate what we want. You know, if you just work for a company, let's just say you work for an engineering company or something like that in the Bay Area, well then, you know, your tax return is your tax return. And so that's a really sophisticated technique to do that. And but if you do that, you got to pay attention 2 years beforehand.
Okay, perfect. And actually, this is a great question to end with because I did think about it. So, are most schools truly need blind in their admissions, or have you in your experience seen that some schools consider requests for aid as a detractor for an applicant? I mean, you kind of
and the answer, so the answer is most schools are need blind because there's $181 billion of money out there, and that money doesn't necessarily come off the school's back. The school will get paid. The question is are they going to get paid out of your pocket or out of Washington, D.C.'s pocket?
So they can't really see as the applications come in. They're not going to. Do they see that the child's asking for financial aid, or? In
a lot of cases, no.
Okay.
But let's just say that even if they did, the school is going to get paid. So Stanford's close to $80,000 a year.
Right.
If you get into Stanford's going to get $80,000 for that student's body, right?
Okay.
That one student. But the question is, where does that $80,000 come from? Does it just come from all the parent, or does only $20,000 come from the parent and another $60,000 come from the federal government and scholarships and grants, and then some from the Stanford endowment, and and then some from the state of California, and
No, it's a good point. I used to think it came from the school, as if you're asking for the school.
Right.
But it's really not. It's a much bigger pot.
It comes from all sorts of different places. That's what the financial aid system, in Washington, D.C. and the $181 billion of tax dollars does. Is, so the school is going to get paid. The question is, whose pocket is going to come out of?
Great.
There
well,
it is.
This is helpful.
So therefore, to answer to nail that answer, so therefore, most schools are really need blind. Because it's like no skin off their nose.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there it is.
That's great.
Yeah.
How about graduate schools? Sorry.
Yeah, and then I hate to say this. Yeah, when it comes to graduate school, the financial aid system doesn't count. Yeah.
Okay.
It's more of just a popularity contest. Is there a professor there that really loves you and wants you to be their TA or something like that? Or do you get loans for graduate school? But so this is just for undergrad, the 4 years of undergrad.
Okay, this has been super helpful. Thank you.
Super. I'm glad to hear it. All right. Well, I look forward to meeting all these parents and helping them reduce their college costs.
Yeah.
That'll be great. So just go to collegecashsolutions.com and hit book a meeting.
Excellent.
All right.
Thanks,
Thank
guys.
you.